morning. Just another workout, as usual. Trying to get this in before I actually have to start work. Boss number randomly messages me at a time. Could be now and ruin my whole entire schedule. Could be later with me realizing I had a lot more time than I actually had. Main things, let's get started so I can give myself as much time as I can. If I at least get to 3 sets, I'm pretty happy. Anything less is a very unfortunate accident. The dog's barking outside. Anyway, for today, I'm going to do some pull-ups, shoulder presses, leg work I'll figure out later. Might just do squats from lazy or jumping lunges, maybe jumping lunges, and Russian twists. I need to do about 36 or 38 kilos today. Anyway, let's get started, I guess. Oh yeah, I'm listening to stuff in the background as usual.
You beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. I got a fantastic Sunday show for you today. We're going to go through the biggest stories of the week, dive into the reactions, the debate, lots to jump through, starting with what happened last Monday. Because with Monday, we saw people sounding off about that derailment in Ohio that led to vinyl chloride being spilled everywhere, with a number of you beautiful bastards who were local speaking up. Like Tabitha, who said, as an East Palestine resident who is still currently displaced from their home and long-term Philly D viewer, this is surreal to be watching. The entire situation has been extremely shady. While our small-town officials are trying to handle it the best way they can for our community's health, mishandling from state and other higher-ups combined with neglect and lack of responsibility taken by Norfolk Southern wanting to get out of this as cheap as possible is making it impossible. We just want to be able to go home to air we can breathe, water we can use, and an environment we can live in without fear that such an act of negligence will happen again here or elsewhere. There was also a general sense that corporate suits need to be held accountable for this, but I don't think any of us are going to hold our breath in anticipation. It was also interesting to hear from Place Fantasy that until we covered it, they weren't sure if the story was real or not, writing not an American and didn't actually know the Ohio situation was real because I kept seeing it as an Ohio meme on social media. I feel like that speaks a lot about meme culture, that I can never tell if things are actually happening in Ohio or if it's just a joke. Which I will say, I feel like I want to investigate that. Is Ohio actually the Midwest's Florida? But also I think that's kind of a testament of how so many people consume news. I also saw Godwing saying it felt like stories like this need to be way more covered on the mainstream media instead of us just shooting down UFOs. So 2 things I want to hit on there. One, not always, but more and more it feels like the why is the mainstream media not talking about this stuff? That's being said while mainstream media is talking about that stuff. It feels like more and more people are saying that to then drive more traffic to however they're covering it. And secondly, regarding the UFOs, like a small update on that, the Pentagon has said many of the other new instances, they were likely privately owned and not from China. So, maybe just some fellow Americans putting balloons in the flight path of commercial planes and not the Chinese, if that makes you feel better. And then, this is just your quick, friendly reminder. People asked me to keep all the new recent drops over at beautifulbastard.com on the site until they got paid on Friday. And so I wanted to say, if you are one of those people and you forgot on Friday because we don't put out a show, I left them up for you. Some things have been selling out. I've been trying to plug the holes as possible. But yeah, get in on the I Love Naps gear. Also available in crew necks and on that schmexy tie-dye champion hoodie. Emotionally exhausted on a ton of different colors. As well as go easy on yourself or nothing of value comes out of my mouth. Depending on the mood you're in. All available, at least right now, over at beautifulbastard.com. Link down below. And then, on Tuesday, oh man, where do we even start? The Michigan State shooting, obviously massive, and whenever that happens, so many reactions. And it's really hard to read just how many of you were affected by it. Because it's not just those on the campus, but their relatives and other people as well, like Sean told us. Writing, my sister is a student at MSU. Thankfully, she was off campus during the shooting, was able to drive home when she heard about it, saying it was really scary hearing about it as the news was flowing in. Glad my family is safe and hope that all others affected by this are secure with their loved ones. Typical Need also giving some advice for MSU survivors. Writing, as a college student who survived a previous school shooting, one which you actually covered when it happened, I live in constant fear knowing that one day I might just be shot and killed for going to college. It's terrifying and I hate that it has become our new norm. I hope everyone at MSU recovers as well as they can since it's something that will never leave you. And there also seemed to be an air of what else can we say about this? Because it feels like nothing's ever going to change. Also, in addition to that, there were a ton of reactions to the train derailments, with Kyler making it clear why changes need to happen. Writing, "I'm one of those class 1 railroaders, been doing it for 10 years now. I love the job and the people, but man, the companies are terrible. They scream safety, safety, but if you bring up a safety concern, they overlook it and don't do shit about it. Case in point, I was a conductor on a train out of Chicago yesterday. Before departing our initial terminal, I noticed our train was going to violate 3 rules. 1, improper class 1 brake test. 2, too long of a train without distributed power, locomotives in the middle of the train essentially. And 3, not having proper paperwork for the train. That shows where your hazardous materials are placed within the train. They went on to state that they had to get approval for the train as is because it's not like they could refuse to move it without losing their job. And if they forgot to get approval to essentially ignore those issues, well, then my engineer and I would be the ones to blame, not the railroad." Kind Heart Gaming also reiterating the sentiments we saw on the topic on Monday's comments, right? That even when they find that Norfolk Southern was responsible for the derailment and that they should be held liable, the company will just find a way to increase their prices, lay off employees, but never actually pay for the damages. In 2 years, the discussion will be about something else. No one who is truly responsible for this will be held accountable. Flint, Michigan still doesn't have drinkable water and they have stopped talking about that. And this comment goes straight to why these industries just getting fines isn't enough. So unfortunately, I feel it's just going to justify the decision to put profits over safety. The whole thing's going to blow over and they might ultimately get a slap on the wrist style fine, but I feel they're going to end up walking away thinking, we sure saved a lot of money by not implementing any safety features. This fine is a fraction of what we saved. And then let's start by talking about deepfake porn, with Dean possibly coming up with an actual solution, saying, "I bet if we start making deepfake porn of our senators and congresspeople, a law will get passed real quick." And while I do not recommend or condone that, I think you're probably right. We also saw Brendan sharing skepticism about Darman's video where he had a ton of actors out there supporting him. Writing, "Darman's video with all those actors," and might I repeat again, actors, "surrounding him in support is about as real to me as any commercial with testimonials. Like, you hire and pay these people their wages. It's like taking a study that's sponsored by Coke at face value and it says that Coke isn't actually that bad for you." But easily the biggest conversation that happened on Wednesday was around Section 230, the future of the internet and our Supreme Court. With many calling for term limits for the Supreme Court, 100% of them and all of Congress need an age limit. The world changes fast and these old people fight to keep it how it was, just like in their generation, oblivious to how that way no longer works in our modern age. And I think this is where we have an increasing need for technical expertise in the judiciary, specialized lawyers that have background on different topics that can step in on these cases. Scientists, economists, computer scientists, engineers, etc., that also have law degrees. That crossover knowledge has so much value in bridging the gap. But there was also pushback against the idea that old people in the court have no idea how tech works, with Julio arguing it's not like they just decide with no research done whatsoever, they argue it for days. Congress can also pass laws to broaden the scope of Section 230, right? Because in any case at the Supreme Court, there are going to be tons of experts testifying. Others also thinking that there are better solutions for dealing with how partisan our court feels, saying the most meaningful reform to any Supreme Court would be to remove the ability of politicians to appoint them. The main purpose of the Supreme Court is meant to be a check on the government, yet it is appointed by the very people who they are meant to oversee. Not to mention the very obvious issue of court stacking to gain a rubber stamp on policy, ideological or otherwise. You can never abolish bias, but you can at least reduce it and remove it from the government's tool belt. However, there are also people wondering what a post-Section 230 world would look like. Some of you even kind of excited about the possibilities presented by the case. Like Thomas, who wrote, "I really like the idea of a return to no suggestions and no curtailing of information amidst the Wild West days on the internet, and if that is the third option, which I doubt boomers would really suggest, then I'm really hoping for the third option. But also, I can't imagine certain social media without any kind of algorithm. Like, what would YouTube even look like? A chronological feed? There's over 500 hours of video uploaded every minute. It'd be as useful as Vimeo for search. It'd be used more like a utility rather than a destination." Megan also wondering, "As a Canadian, I'm so curious how these potential legal changes will affect content in other countries. While a lot of big companies like Meta, Twitter, Google, etc. are currently US-based, would they eventually choose to pull out of the US and just be available in other countries like Canada?" And with that, I want to say, I do not have a crystal ball. I do not know what will happen. But let's say Section 230 is just dead and the tech companies jump ship. It's not like things would go back to normal, right? One of the reasons the internet is so open right now is because of American law. The rest of the world, or at least places you'd imagine the American companies would want to go, are far more restrictive. But the EU and Canada actually already have laws in place that make sites liable for certain things posted on them. And it'd be far easier for them to strictly enforce those rules if, say, YouTube's headquarters were in those countries. And according to the Council on Foreign Relations, because US law is so fundamental for how the internet works, revoking Section 230 could open the door for far more countries to try and make very restrictive laws, which I don't think many of us actually want. And then, by now, I'm sure you've heard me talk about the sponsor of today's show, Athletic Greens, and how AG1 has been an essential part of my life for over 3 years. You know, I'll admit, my eating habits aren't perfect. Even with the drastic changes that I've made, I still rely on AG1 to help me fill nutritional gaps in my diet. Each scoop of AG1 is 9 health products in one, giving you the equivalent of a multivitamin, probiotic, minerals, and more. more. It's designed to support your energy, focus, gut health, immune system, and more. Athletic Greens also invests in high-quality ingredients, going above and beyond to ensure what's on the label is exactly what's in the powder. AG1 is also NSF certified for sport, meaning it's trusted by top athletes for clean nutrition. And it's honestly the best tasting and most comprehensive nutritional drink I've found, making it an essential and easy part of my routine. So don't wait, they're giving you added immune system support with a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, plus 5 individual travel packs with your purchase. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more comprehensive supplement, so go to athleticgreens.com/Franco or click the link below to get a 1-year supply of vitamin D drops plus 5 travel packs with your first purchase at AG1. And then, on Thursday, people were aghast with Emily Love writing, "No way rich people would take advantage of poor people. I'll never believe it." What Goldman Sachs and what all these ultra-rich fucks do is ridiculous when you really think about how it affects every regular individual person. But also, what a ton of people were sounding off on was the Billie Eilish story. That really wasn't just about Billie Eilish. It was about so many people, but especially younger women. With a jubilant poet saying, you know, that story is an excellent example of why I keep myself nice and cozy in my little social media bubble of my friends. With Ziggy adding, "For me, the depression from social media hits when I take 1 second to realize every big person I watch or interact with is more successful than I will ever be, and probably something like half of them are my age or younger." So it does kind of feel hopeless in that moment. So the first thing I'll say, Ziggy, it's a known phrase, but comparison is the thief of joy. I know that's easier said than done. I'll open up to you for a second. There are times where I feel down on myself and I slip and I'll accidentally compare myself to someone huge, and I'll feel incredibly shitty about my situation, and I'll start focusing on like every bad business decision I've made, completely ignoring like all the other positives I have in my life, whether they be something that is monetary or status or family and friends. So know that no matter what you do in your life, if you compare, it is a joy thief. And secondly, I can't really give you any further advice, because what you see as success and happiness may not be the same as me, right? Because I know fucking people in this industry that their idea of like success and happiness is like, I have to have a Lamborghini. Personally, I can't relate. And I also want to say this to you, hopefully it doesn't come off as condescending or controversial. The current world is not built for everyone to succeed, but those of you listening to me right now, I truly believe that you can. We are a small percentage of the entire population. And to paraphrase David Goggins, it is easy to be great in a weak world. We live in a weak world with a lot of motherfuckers who want, but not a lot of motherfuckers who do. And even fewer motherfuckers who do after they fail and fail and fail and try and fail again. So ignore the noise, ignore what other people say is success, create the targets you want to hit in your life, then ask yourself why you want to hit those targets, see if they all stay the same, and pick a thing that you think gets you an inch, a step, a mile closer to it. Ziggy, I don't know why your comment hit me like that. Okay, anyway. Hopefully that was helpful. Also, specifically regarding young girls, we had Stella Bloom saying, "I'm the same age as Billie and I can definitely relate to her and also those teenage girls. When I was in secondary school in 6th form, I suffered so much with mental health, especially in 6th form. Youth have been in crisis for a while and are begging for help, and social media has just been an ever-growing part of that. I struggled so much with body image and how I should act as a woman. I was bullied online and it wasn't a fun experience, but if you're not online, you get bullied for that. It's a vicious cycle, but I hope we can really start acting to help today's youth experience better." And finally, there was a lot of focus on the politician who had to crawl on stage because he was in a wheelchair. With Pronghor writing, "As a disabled person who lives in the Denver area, the fact that a councilman was treated this way is certainly enraging, but not shocking. Saying, historically speaking, us disabled people have been left on the sidelines and forced to fight for basic human dignity and access. I feel lucky to have cystic fibrosis because I don't require a wheelchair to get around, but I still rely on family to survive as I can't work a full-time job. Forcing a disabled councilman to clamber up on stage, it's almost like forcing me to give a speech in a smoky room. It's appalling, but unfortunately society is beyond fucked up, and those of us who aren't normal have historically been left to fend for ourselves." And, you know, that was something we saw a lot of, but especially from people that are in electric wheelchairs, saying, you know, it's so disheartening to live in a world that's literally not designed for you, right? And it's little things that I don't even think about, right? Phoenix mentioning a few, from like foliage overgrown in the pavement to drop curbs that aren't dropped enough and cycle gates on the potholed footpaths, which I will say, everyone sharing their stories, it gives me an extra appreciation for this Sunday show, or even just what we have in general, because often when we talk about a story, it's a thing that happened to someone else, but when it's someone in our community and someone speaking about things from a first-person point of view, it just hits different. So thank you to you. So thank you to everyone not only watching the show, but being a part of that conversation in the comments. You know, actually, to close today's show and get us ready for the brand new Monday Philip DeFranco show, let's close this out with some help from our frustrated news correspondent, Zed Tabani. Zed?
Smoke! Something in Ohio, black smoke stretching out longer than a mile.
I'm not too into it, personally. Nothing against the guy.
Andrew Tate's threatening alleged victims with a $300 million lawsuit, new Libby Dunn creepiness, more kids' books are being censored, new leaked text just exposed, all the liars over at Fox News, a creepy part of Japan is changing. We're going to talk about all of that and so much more in today's brand new Philip DeFranco show, shot from a nondescript bedroom. So buckle up, that like button to show love for still putting out a show on a travel day, and let's just jump into it. Starting with a huge update around Andrew Tate, some describing the situation as him pursuing justice, others saying it's a desperate ploy to intimidate his alleged victims, because reports are coming out that Tate and his brother Tristan sent a cease and desist back in December to at least one woman who claims that the brothers trafficked and raped her, and saying that if she didn't retract her claims, they'd sue her and her parents for $300 million. Now what's currently unclear is whether this letter was sent before or after the arrests, right, that happening back on December 29th. And currently, both brothers are still behind bars in Romania, authorities identifying 6 potential female victims so far. But of course, throughout all this, we've seen the Tates repeatedly claiming over and over that they're innocent. And this latest news appearing to be one of the steps in kind of the narrative that Andrew Tate was being framed. Because according to the BBC, the brothers are now actively pursuing those defamation claims against that woman. Though, and it's really important to note here, the woman's lawyer has argued that this letter is just a bold-faced intimidation tactic, saying that the Tates just want to shut her up and keep her from spilling damning testimony at their trial. And with that, another one of the lawyers representing 2 of the witnesses in this investigation said they've already been the target of slut-shaming, doxing, and even death threats by Tate's followers. And that lawyer adding, they're scared to death. They're both in hiding. They feel they can't settle anywhere because people are trying to find them. But for now, that's where we are. We'll continue to keep our eyes on this and wait for what's really just been a continued slow trickle of information. But with that, I will ask, what are your thoughts regarding the $300 million lawsuit? And then, has wokeness gone too far, or are people just losing their minds? That's the question that people are debating with this whole Roald Dahl controversy that exploded over the weekend. Roald Dahl is the famed children's book author who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, and Matilda. And recently, when the new editions of all his classics hit bookstores, readers noticed something was different about them. And as it turns out, publisher Puffin Books, a division of Penguin Random House, they retrospectively edited the dead author's work to make him less offensive for modern readers, with most of the changes relating to race, gender, weight, and mental health. For example, Augustus Gloop in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was previously called enormously fat. Now he's just called enormous. Also, every mention of fat as well as ugly has been removed from the books. You have any reference to females being removed, with women being put in its place. Gender-neutral terms often being preferred instead, so now Oompa Loompas are small people, not small men. But they also didn't just change wording. In some cases, they even add entirely new sentences. Like in The Witches, a paragraph explaining that witches are bald beneath their wigs now ends with the line, there are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there is certainly nothing wrong with that. Now, in its defense, Puffin says it hired so-called sensitivity readers to comb the text, and that any changes were small and carefully considered, and adding that it's normal to re-release later editions with revisions, and they're seeking to make Dahl's work more accessible to all readers. But with this, many people are up in arms, with big literary names like Salman Rushdie tweeting, Roald Dahl was no angel, but this is absurd censorship. Puffin Books and the Dahl estate should be ashamed. And with that adding that he's aware that Dahl is a racist anti-Semite, but still doesn't think we should censor it. Another person arguing, kids liked Roald Dahl because he's the weird kid in the playground who wants to show you a box full of worms and slugs, and trying to rewrite him into a preacher of didactic virtue is going to ring inevitably falls to the spirit of the books. And so with that, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts. Personally, I think the censorship and the changes are stupid. Like, I understand the desire to make something more accessible, but you're changing what it is. It is a story who was written by a certain person at a certain place at a certain time. I think in general, I think this is the edge of a coffee table that doesn't need to be padded. But that said, I'm just one guy, so I want to know your thoughts. What do you think about the situation, whether you agree or disagree with me? And then, Japan started to catch up with the rest of the developed world. And to clarify, I don't mean things like standard of living or economic success or public transit. Oh my god, their trains are so cool. But rather, I'm talking about some of their laws. Because a panel from the Japanese Ministry of Justice is moving to recommend that the country's age of consent be raised to 16. Because creepy fact about Japan, it currently has the lowest age of consent in the developed world at just 13 years old. And so this decision is part of a plan to overhaul the country's sex laws and also includes provisions that would criminalize grooming. Also, to be fair, it's not a completely black and white situation because while 13 is the national age of consent, most prefectures have ordinances in place that ban lewd acts with people that young. However, and this is a key thing, it was not a rape charge and carried a far lower prison sentence. These changes will also finally expand the definition of rape to include acts committed by drugging someone or getting them way too drunk. And that's an absolutely massive step forward because the law, as currently written, it requires the victims to not only prove that they did not provide consent, but also demonstrate that there was an assault or intimidation that made it completely impossible to resist. And so what all of this also means is that it'll now be 7 EU countries that have the lowest age of consent at just 14. Although again, to be fair, many of those explicitly ban sexual activities between minors and adults outside of a certain age gap, right? The so-called Romeo and Juliet laws. And it'll be interesting to see how things continue to change. range, right? If you look at most U.S. states, the number is around 16, though that is slowly shifting towards an 18-year-old standard. Also, with this story, I do want to be clear, if you see this and you just start looking up the age of consent laws in different places because you want to prey on minors, Weirdos doesn't even cover it. You're a predator. People like that are actively pursuing people who are not mature enough to fully understand what it is to consent. And so to jump back to the main story, Japan, at the very least, please pass these fucking laws. 13? Are you fucking insane? And then, I think most of us know that most Fox News is bullshit, even the people that are peddling the bullshit. But these leaked messages, actually seeing them, like, it puts your jaw on the floor. So these text messages come in the weeks surrounding election night 2020, when Fox made itself one of the first outlets to call the election for Biden, which of course enraged Trump and his followers, who jumped to more extreme competitors like Newsmax and OAN instead. So to bid to win those people back, Fox hosts turned down the fire hose and let the bullshit fly, with stars like Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham either promoting conspiracy theories themselves or uncritically platforming guests who would. And one bullshit theory in particular, the Dominion voting machines were rigged, it bit them in the ass later as Dominion sued Fox for defamation. And so now that $1.6 billion lawsuit is still unfolding, and the filings have already revealed how many Fox hosts disbelieved privately what they were feeding their audience publicly, with Hannity saying of Sidney Powell, a guest frequently brought on to smear Dominion, that whole narrative that Sidney was pushing, I did not believe it for 1 second. And then adding about Trump, he's acting like an insane person. As for Tuck Fuck, he texted Ingram that Sidney Powell is lying, by the way, I caught her, it's insane. Also adding that she is a, quote, fucking bitch. And Ingram saying Sidney is a complete nut, no one will work with her, ditto with Rudy. Which Tucker responds, our viewers are good people and they believe it. But Tucker then gets even more cynical when he sees a tweet by a Fox reporter fact-checking Trump's false claims about Dominion, with him texting his co-host saying, please get her fired, it needs to stop immediately, like tonight. It's measurably hurting the company, the stock price is down. And then shortly afterward, like magic, poof, the tweet disappears like it never happened. You also have Bill Salmon, Fox's managing editor in Washington, quoted as saying, it's remarkable how weak ratings make good journalists do bad things. As well as Fox president Jay Wallace saying about host Lou Dobbs, the North Koreans do a more nuanced show than him. And a producer also saying of Dobbs, Jesus Christ, does anyone do a fucking simple Google search or read emails? And another producer texting, this Dominion shit is giving me a fucking aneurysm. With it finally going all the way to the tippity top to Rupert Murdoch, head of the Fox Corporation, who called Trump's election denialism really crazy stuff. So if you're ever wondering whether some right-wing pundit or politician actually believes the insane bullshit they are spewing, you now know the answer for probably a majority of them. It's fiction over fact because it's money over values. And then the Elon Muskification of social media is underway, with Mark Zuckerberg over the weekend announcing that the company is rolling out Meta Verified, which he described as, quote, a subscription service that lets you verify your account with a government ID, get a blue badge, get extra impersonation protection against accounts claiming to be you, and get direct access to customer support. With that service set to start at $11.99 per month for web users and $14.99 a month for iOS. It'll be rolled out this week in New Zealand and Australia, and other countries will follow soon, with a Meta spokesperson saying it'll be expanded to the US in a matter of weeks. And I call this the Muskification of social media because, of course, you know, you have Twitter Blue, Elon Musk launching that after he took over the platform, charging people for the blue checks to get certain features, also now to hold on to certain features, which on that note, it'll be interesting to see if it's as much of a clusterfuck launch with Zuckerberg at the helm as it was with Musk and Twitter. But regardless, we are seeing a trend here. Social media companies that have for so long been free now asking people to pay for their services, as well as, like I said, just holding on to things. The reason I mention that is that Twitter just announced that it's going to start making everyone pay for two-factor authentication via text message. Right? Only people who pay for Twitter Blue will have that. And I think it also shows more and more, and this isn't a new thing, that social media companies see themselves as something that allows for everyone to be a user-generated content machine who wants to get the views, who wants to get the attention, rather than a thing you just keep up with your friends on. But I've always felt like, to a certain degree, that's kind of always been the case, at least for people under a certain age. It's kind of the reason why I think Bo Burnham is so accessible, once again, for people under a certain age, because in general, there is a performer mindset ingrained because of social media and the internet. Or because while we gained access to it at different times, like, it became just part of who we were. But yeah, for now, we'll have to wait and see if it's adopted and successful, or a dumpster fire. And then, I'm not your mommy. That quote is at the center of one of the weirder and random stories that people were requesting over on the text line this weekend. And that line being said by LSU gymnast and TikToker Livy Dunn. Right, if you're not immediately familiar with her, you may remember we've talked about her recently. Or things like, because she's so famous, there were a mob of fans descending on a meet that she wasn't even participating in. LSU having to announce that it was amping up security, future away meets. But Liddy speaking out and asking people, please do not do this. And well, luckily, or at least it appears that way because it's not being talked about as much, it seems like that part has calmed down. There has been even general online creepiness on display, to a point that even Fox News was covering it. Or one of her fans writing "mommy" on a TikTok she posted, but Dunn reportedly stitching it saying, "No, I'm not going to crush your skull with my thighs. Also, I'm not your mommy." But she then deleted that after it unleashed a whole barrel of monkeys. Because, and this is part of the reason why a lot of creators don't speak about like the really fucking weird and creepy shit that happens, it led to tons of fans spamming her with messages trying to get her to respond. And, there was part of my brain when people were recommending we cover this story, I was like, this is kind of a nothing stupid story, but also at the same time, it does add another spotlight to the weird creepiness of trying to navigate parasocial relationships. Right? If she doesn't speak on it, oh, she's probably fine with it. But if she does speak on it, some people are going to think she's overly sensitive. Others are going to go, oh my God, this is actually a two-way street. And then the creator ends up being on the receiving end of even more of the stuff they were trying to stop, which is why, sure, this is a Livy Dunn story, but it's also not. It's a far more standard story than maybe people realize. And then, for any of you focused on getting your business off the ground, creating a place to share your homemade goods, new favorite hobby, current obsession, or even a personal blog to get all those thoughts out of your head, I've got a great solution for you thanks to today's fantastic partner and sponsor of the show, squarespace.com/Phil. When you realize you love it, make sure you enter in offer code Phil to get 10% off your first purchase. And then, are billionaires at Davos farming thousands of lab-grown babies in Matrix-style incubators? Well, fortunately, no. That's a conspiracy theory that was spread by nutjobs on Twitter who got so much traction, Reuters actually had to do a fact check on it, with the origins of it being this video that turns out just to be a concept idea by a filmmaker. But Davos, on the other hand, is less of a conspiracy theory and more of a conspiracy fact. Or if you're unaware, it's a yearly conference where a bunch of billionaires, central bankers, heads of state, and Fortune 500 CEOs meet at a luxury ski resort in the Swiss Alps. And there, they discuss how to address all the global economic and political challenges facing our world. But the most recent meeting happening last month, and it went kind of how you'd expect a hotel full of rich people putting their brains together to go. You had a panel that was basically an infomercial for the Saudi Crown Prince, Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema high-fiving over their support for the filibuster, a group of executives proposing better company culture as the solution to worker discontent rather than, I don't know, paying them more. And despite Davos supposedly being committed to the Paris Climate Accords, a recent Greenpeace report exposed its gross hypocrisy, finding that about 500 private jets flew in and out of last year's summit, and half of those were short-haul flights under 750 kilometers that could have easily been done by train instead. And my personal favorite, the single shortest flight being just 13 miles. Motherfucker could have biked there. But the organization that got the most attention for skewering Davos was Oxfam, which released a world inequality report titled Survival of the Richest to coincide with the opening day of Davos, a straight shot across the bow. And it's packed full of mind-boggling facts, so to kind of get a sense of where humanity is at in 2023, we spoke with Nabil Ahmed, Oxfam America's Director of Economic Justice. And he told us that in the decade before the pandemic, the global 1% soaked up roughly half of all new wealth created. But then, COVID arrived, and in the years since then, that number has gotten so much worse.
The world's richest 1% have grabbed 2/3 of all new wealth created in the world. Do you know what that means? That means they've grabbed twice as much money as the rest of humanity, the 99% of us put together. That's truly extraordinary.
Just to put that into perspective, the top 1% got $26 trillion and everyone else got 16. Or to put it differently, that's $1.7 million in their pockets for every dollar the bottom 90% earn. Which is why Nabil says this level of inequality hasn't been seen in decades, possibly even surpassing the Roaring 20s. But it's also important to note that inequality comes in many forms. You've got not just class, but race, gender, nationality. And on inequality between nations, or what Nabil calls colonial inequality, he said things are just getting worse there too.
Because, for hundreds of years, we saw the gap between rich and poor nations widen as a result of that horrific era of slavery and colonialism. Then, in the wake of liberation, earlier in the 20th century, we saw that gap begin to start to close. And do you know what's happened now? As a result of the pandemic, we're seeing that gap between rich and poor nations widen again.
Much of that inequality is rooted in the history he just described, which left poor countries dependent on their former colonizers through mechanisms like financial obligations, for example, with absolutely huge chunks of their already meager national budgets used to just pay off the interest on foreign debt rather than go towards healthcare, education, infrastructure, and other public services. Which isn't to say like all these countries don't have their own upper crust as well. They do, and more middle-income ones like India, China, and Brazil have their own billionaires. So inequality is everywhere, and depending on who you ask, some might actually say it's a good thing. Or we've all heard that metaphor that a rising tide lifts all boats, meaning the wealth trickles down to the poor as well, but Nabil says otherwise.
For the first time in 25 years, we've seen extreme wealth and extreme poverty rise simultaneously. Even before the pandemic, we were seeing poverty starting to rise in some places around the world. We were also starting to see the actual rate at which poverty was being reduced. We were seeing that decelerate. We were putting the alarms out. But to be honest, Too few governments around the world took it seriously. We heard a lot of talk. We got a decade of lip service, and then comes the pandemic.
Now, according to Oxfam, roughly 820 million people are going hungry, those disproportionately being women and girls. With the cost of living going up, you're seeing that problem get worse and worse, with at least 1.7 billion workers in countries where inflation is outpacing wages, which Oxfam argues is driven by that very inequality.
Right? It estimates that excess corporate profits have produced at least half of inflation in the US, UK, and Australia.
With Nabil adding that inequality is literally killing people.
Inequality is not academic. We've shown through our work as well that yes, inequality leads to less safe, less healthy, less happy societies. But you know what? Inequality also kills. Inequality contributes to one death every 4 seconds.
So what exactly are the causes of this huge upsurge of wealth to the very top in the last few years? Well, there, Nabil gave us a few answers, starting with the fiscal and monetary measures taken by governments to revive national economies.
Number one, we saw this injection of trillions of dollars into our economies to keep them afloat. But without the guardrails existing in our economy to share that wealth fairly, so much of those trillions ended up lining the pockets of the very rich through a stock market boom, through an asset boom. That's number one.
Then we saw what Nabil calls a corporate smash and grab for profits, with opportunistic companies exploiting the rise in prices.
95 food and energy corporations have actually doubled their profits in 2022. At one point, we saw some of the big pharma companies making $1,000 in profit a second.
And finally, the pandemic accelerated long-term trends like the weakening of labor unions and the strengthening of monopoly capital. So all of this raises the question, well, how do we get the hell out of this mess? Well, if you ask the Oxfam report, the answer is taxes, 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 though not even across the board. Its recommendations are as follows. First, one-off wealth taxes and windfall taxes to end crisis profiteering. 2, permanent taxes on the richest 1%'s income and capital gains. And 3, direct taxes on the wealth of the rich, including on inheritance, property, and land. We're going to talk about that last one because Oxfam actually worked with 3 other organizations to crunch the numbers, and Nabil told us what they found.
Just to give you one example, wealth tax of up to 5% on the world's multimillionaires and billionaires, that could raise about $1.7 trillion. That's enough, to illustrate, to lift about 2 billion people out of poverty.
Saying this is a problem not just of political will, but also of imagination. But here's the thing, since the pandemic, none of that's happened, and in fact, we've slid backwards.
As well, our research shows that 95% of countries froze or cut tax rates on the very richest and on corporations during the pandemic, at a time when governments needed that money.
Now, I know in this story I've thrown a lot of numbers at you, and it could be very hard to fathom what $26 trillion really means, which is why I want to give you the words of one of the world's richest men himself, Warren Buffett, who remarked many years ago, "There's class warfare, all right, but it's my class, the rich class, that's making war, and we're winning." And on that happy note, that's where this Monday show ends. Thank you as always for being a part of my daily dives in the news, being subscribed to the channel. For more news you gotta know, click here. But as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peering into amateur TikTok investigators are terrorizing this town. Russia's big, mad, and desperate. Ohio just can't catch a break. Ethan Klein done goofed again, and this is the last time I want to talk about it. But we're going to talk about all that and so much more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show, so buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into it. Starting with this news that all it takes is one mysterious disappearance for the whole internet to lose its damn mind. And Exhibit A is Nicola Bully. She's a 45-year-old mortgage advisor in a small Lancashire village in Britain who was last seen over 3 weeks ago. And all we know is that she dropped her $2 off at school, then went for a walk with her dog, then sending an email to her employer, texting a friend about a play date, and logging on to a Microsoft Teams work call with her camera and microphone turned off. With that lasting for half an hour, and a few minutes later, someone finds her phone on a bench, still connected to the meeting with her dog running around it, its harness on the ground. So at this point, the police's leading theory is that she fell into the nearby river, saying there's no evidence of foul play. With search teams scouring the riverbed using divers and sonar equipment, but finding nothing, and instead shifting downstream, which is exactly when all hell breaks loose. Because you see, TikTok catches wind of this story, and it quickly goes viral, with videos using Bully's name as a hashtag collecting over 270 million views as of Friday. This inspiring legions of amateur TikTok detectives to flood the scene for clues, which sounds like, hey, maybe that could be helpful, except for one thing. Most, if not all of them, have no fucking idea what they're doing. And secondly, many just start spreading rumors, speculation, and conspiracy theories, with some clips even suggesting Nicola's friends are crisis actors and that Nicola herself isn't even real. Or you have people claiming the whole thing's a performance staged by the government to distract the public for reasons? Then thirdly, they're just a fucking nuisance. You got some taking selfies at the bench where where Bully's phone was found, reportedly peering into windows and jiggling locked door handles at people's homes, with one person even attempting to remove the panels from a pumping station, presumably to check if Bully was in there. We also saw one YouTuber and TikToker, Dan Duffy, getting arrested after he said in a video that he searched an abandoned house and had been in people's back gardens at nighttime with torches. And so with all this chaos, you had the borough's council leader saying his town of 600 people had begun to feel like a theme park where people were coming along to play detective. All of this prompting the Lancaster police to issue a dispersal order, which, hey, that's normal enough, but then they also took a rather unusual step, releasing a statement that Bully had been classified as a high-risk missing person because she, quote, suffered with some significant issues with alcohol, which were brought on by her ongoing struggles with menopause. So with that, we saw swift backlash from critics who accused them of publicizing what should remain private information about Bully, with Rishi Sunak and other MPs expressing concern over this breach of privacy. Also, leading Britain's independent data privacy authority to announce it would be investigating the police's decision, and others even going further, alleging sexism and misogyny playing a role here, with veteran police watchdog Zoe Billingham saying, would we talk about a man in a similar situation? Poor old Barney's hit the bottle because he's got erectile dysfunction. That would be unimaginable for the police to put that out. And notably, all of this coming a year after the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Sarah Everard by a cop in London that shocked the nation, after which a poll showed 40% of men and 47% of women reported declining trust in police since the murder, as well as a report last year by the UK's independent police watchdog finding a culture of misogyny, sexism, and predatory behavior toward members of the public. And so with a search for Nicholas stretching on for weeks, people got restless again, but on Sunday, police finally found her body. So now, not only do our loved ones have to deal with her tragic death, but also the incompetence of police and the insensitivity of TikTok crime tourists. As if that wasn't enough, the news media fucked up its coverage of the case as well, with Nicola's family saying the press and members of the public have accused her partner of wrongdoing and misquoted and vilified friends and family. I think that Sky News and ITV contacted them for comment after the body was discovered despite express requests for privacy. And so in the end, it just feels like everyone fucked up here. This family's grief in a nightmare situation was turned into a national spectacle because why? Well, because a number of problems, but one of the most in-your-face ones being that it feels like people don't fucking see people as people anymore, that it's just content. And even for those that have like a hero complex or to a lesser extent, they think that, yeah, I just want to help. There are ways to help in a way that doesn't make everything worse. And I'm just left hoping that the family, the friends, everyone impacted by this, they can heal. And everyone else who messed up in this situation, that they learn from it, they own it, and they grow. And then, are Elon Musk and Twitter trying to curb criticism of Tesla? That's a question many Twitter users have been wondering over the past 24 hours. And it's because many received a warning pop-up when they liked a tweet that put Tesla in a negative light, with the tweets in question including a link to an article on ChinaDaily.com titled "Limited Lineup a Problem for Tesla." And one tweet sharing that article is saying, imagine the head of the China Passenger Car Association saying this about your company, with a screenshot of a quote from that official featured in the piece reading, Tesla's facing a serious problem of a very limited product mix. Its slowness to respond to Chinese consumers' preferences has led to a very passive positioning for Tesla to rely on few means such as price cuts to stay competitive, with 30,000 people liking that tweet, and some who did so responded to the post noting they got a pop-up from Twitter. A pop-up saying, help keep Twitter a place for reliable info. Find out more before liking this tweet. So tons of people started calling it out, with many pointing to Elon himself because not only is he the head of both Twitter and Tesla, but because he has this air of, him being Mr. Free Speech. So in this situation, it appeared he was trying to put warning flags on a post critical of one of his companies. And there were tons of people commenting on this and spreading this. Podcaster Ethan Klein, for example, tweeting, Elon Musk, a free speech warrior, is automatically censoring articles critical of Tesla. Try liking this tweet and you'll see. And others saying things like, so Pfizer is currently trending from conspiracy theorists, and those tweets can be liked, retweeted with zero issue, but noting attempting to like or retweet this Tesla post flashes a warning to find further information while providing no further information. Unbiased forum, by the way. And political commentator Hassan Piker writing, obviously Elon never bought this website for free speech purposes. He was forced, but this level of petty tyrant behavior where he's trying to stop retweets and likes on tweets about Tesla from spreading on Twitter is a new low I didn't imagine was possible. And that one was extra interesting because people quickly started responding to him saying, hey, I actually got the same warning when I liked your tweet about this. But all that said, according to Forbes, the reason for the warning isn't Musk's well-documented sensitivity around criticism of his various brands, and instead saying these kinds of pop-ups appear when you like a tweet linking out to a state-owned news source from Russia or China, with China Daily being a CCP-owned outlet. Forbes also noting that the warning doesn't prevent you from liking the tweet, you just have to read it before you do. And quickly with people realizing, oh, even with non-Tesla articles from China Daily, I get that same warning. Though, notable change, as of this morning, my team was actually able to like a variety of tweets linking out to China Daily with no warnings at all. Extra note, just doing research, not a fan of the CCP, that including the original tweet that we showed, including the Tesla article. No issue. Same with Hassan's tweet. And so as of recording, it's unclear exactly what changed between then and now. But notably, that Forbes article that clarified the situation was posted just last night. And as of recording, Elon hasn't tweeted about any changes, and normally he seems like he would. But yeah, that's the situation as it appears right now. And I also, you know what? It is so beside the point of this story, but since he was mentioned, I kind of just want to say this. To Ethan Klein, can you stop talking about my fucking weight on your podcast? Well, I personally use people saying negative things about my weight or my looks as further motivation when I'm working out, to the point that I even do like David Goggins-esque bullshit, like taking the audio of them calling me fat or whatever language they use and mixing it with pump-up songs for my workouts. There are also tons of people that deal with weight issues and eating disorders, which, by the way, it's well documented that I've talked about myself having an eating disorder that I've had to really fight to overcome over the years. So when you say on your podcast to hundreds of thousands and if not millions of people that I am permanently doughy, that I am a ham sandwich, it's fucked, and I think it can have a genuinely negative impact on other people. But that's where I'm going to leave it. I don't want anyone going after anyone because of things that were said about me. I just think that we should all try to be better. And then I want to take a second to thank the fantastic sponsor of today's show, Raycon. I probably got 3 pairs of Raycons, one from my gym bag, a set from my desk, a pair on my nightstand. And that might sound excessive, but it's also easy because Raycons are affordable, starting at half the price of other premium audio brands, so you don't have to choose between products. Get one of each, a pair, a spare. And they have 3 sound profiles: pure sound for when I'm listening to podcasts, balanced sound when the music changes up, and I love the bass sound, great for when I just want to kick it into another gear. Also, if you ever wondered, yes, Philip DeFranco says shit like kick it into another gear. I'm corny, I do not care. There also says a noise isolation, but if you need to hear what's going on around you, just touch and hold the right earbud logo for 3 seconds and you get put into awareness mode. Plus, they're really comfortable with optimized gel tips for the perfect in-ear fit, so they won't budge, and really, trust me, they will not budge. So you ready to buy something small with a big impact? That's what he said. Then click that link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/DeFranco to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. And remember, they offer free shipping, free returns, and buy now, pay later options, and have a 30-day happiness guarantee. And then, Ohio can't get a damn break right now. Where the state's still reeling from the train derailment and the environmental concerns that it sparked after officials decided to burn hazardous materials to prevent a bigger explosion. And then, just yesterday, there was a major explosion at an industrial plant outside of Cleveland that killed 1 person and injured at least a dozen others. According to authorities, the incident took place at the I. Schumann & Co. metal factory in Bedford, Ohio. The fire department captain Brian DeRocco saying that the firefighters have been called to a very large explosion with heavy fire and smoke that sent debris hundreds of yards raining down on cars nearby. It was also reported that the blast sent debris across the street, produced a crater in a building, and created a smoke plume that could be seen for miles. With a witness who works across the street saying, "It was the loudest noise we ever heard. Everything was shaking. Things were falling off the shelves here. It blew up half the building. It blew debris and shrapnel. There were cars on fire. We just saw pandemonium after the explosion." And according to DeRocco, 13 people were taken to hospitals, mainly for burns, and 1 person was in critical condition, with a spokesperson for the county later confirming that a 46-year-old man had died. Now, as far as the cause of the explosion, it's currently unknown. It's under investigation, with DeRocco having described the place as a relatively safe plant, and adding it's a foundry, so you're dealing with molten hot metal, so there's always an inherent danger. With I. Schumann & Co. describing it as an explosion of unknown origin, and adding that they'll work alongside investigators in their search for answers. And so while we all obviously send our well wishes to those affected by this horrible blast, hopefully we'll have more information and more answers in the coming days. And then, to save money, maybe you should skip breakfast. That is a very real verbatim headline that the Wall Street Journal ran about a week ago, but I would argue more importantly, that also appears to be a new platform for the Republican Party. Because right now, GOP lawmakers are considering cutting food stamps as part of their new budget proposal. The idea being floated by multiple members as part of an effort to reduce the national deficit is including Republicans now leading the House Budget Committee, who flagged food stamps, formerly known as Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program or SNAP, as one of the 10 areas they would support cuts. With the committee arguing that stricter work requirements would save tens of billions of dollars, while a more rigid verification process for applicants would limit waste, fraud, and abuse. But that, contrary to experts saying that these proposed changes could result in devastating cuts for the 41 million Americans who rely on food stamps and exacerbate an ongoing hunger crisis at a time when food prices have been rising due to inflation. All right, so some of the details. SNAP provides low-income households with an average of around $230 a month for groceries. And for many of those families who are also the most impacted by inflationary price increases across the board, that money is absolutely essential, which is why any cuts to SNAP would be incredibly harmful, especially because Republicans want these cuts despite the fact that Congress already agreed just 2 months ago to end a pandemic-era program that increased benefits in some states. Back in March of 2020, SNAP was expanded so households could receive maximum benefits instead of benefits based on income tests. And so with those benefits now expiring in March, an estimated 16 million households will see their per-person benefits drop by around $82 a month. And so as a result, we're seeing lots of Democrats fighting against the effort to cut SNAP benefits even more and risk plunging more Americans into hunger. This including Representative Brendan Boyle, the leading Democrat on the House Budget Committee, who told Axios, if Republicans really wanted to reduce families' reliance on SNAP, they wouldn't block efforts to raise the minimum wage, extend the child tax credit, and lower the cost of childcare. But here's the thing, even if Republicans don't end up cutting SNAP in the budget, the program's not out of hot water. And that's because while raising the debt limit is at the forefront of stupid fucking partisan battles right now, we're already seeing a fight shaping up over another essential piece of legislation, the Farm Bill, which notably is a package that has to be updated and reauthorized every couple of years. And it's not whatever, the package is absolutely massive. Not only is it one of the most important tasks that Congress deals with, it also includes a ton of incredibly important subsidies and programs that are imperative to America's food systems, farms, and much more. And one of the super important programs that fall under the purview of the Farm Bill is, you guessed it, SNAP. And so we've already seen Republicans floating the idea of cuts to SNAP as part of the Farm Bill instead. And so as far as what's going to actually happen to the tens of millions of Americans who rely on this, well, at least with the Farm Bill, lawmakers have until October 1st to either enact a new version or just agree on some kind of extension. And then, in this life, we all make mistakes, but rarely do I think we ever make $275 million mistakes. And I mentioned that very specific amount of money because that's how much Spain's government dished out 3 years ago for a contract to modernize its trains in 2 northern regions. With the project slated to finish next year, except until last month they got a surprise announcement, and it's why there are sayings like measure twice, cut once are a thing. The contractor, as it turns out, had been given the wrong dimensions, so the trains were actually too wide to fit through many of the region's tunnels. Meaning now, the project has to be delayed 2 years and somebody somewhere is very, very embarrassed. Which also probably connected to yesterday Spain's Secretary of State for Transport resigning in shame along with the president of the state rail operator. But hey, not all bad news for commuters, with the government announcing that travel on affected networks will be free until 2026. And also, to make a bad situation less horrible, clarifying that this error was spotted before the trains had actually been built, so there will be delays, but the money has not necessarily been wasted. Also, as an American, because I think it's important that we own our L's and we don't just like make fun of other countries, it's important to remember things like the $125 million Mars rover that NASA lost in 1999. With that one happening because Lockheed Martin did their measurements in English units and the agency does theirs using the metric system. And then, the murdering clown known as Vladimir Putin is going off the rails. As President Biden is preparing to make a speech in Warsaw, Putin was ranting to Russian lawmakers this morning and making some ridiculous claims in the process. Right, a key thing, this speech comes just days before the 1-year mark of the war in Ukraine, or as Putin once again put it, the special military operation. And the speech was likely meant to drum up domestic support for Russia, jumping from topic to topic and saying everything from the US was the cause of the war to claiming that pedophilia was normalized in the West. He also doubled down on his claim that the sanctions against Russia have been ineffective, citing its access to new markets. Though it does seem like he ignored the fact that his GDP shrank by 2.1% and it's only expected to get worse. But in this, Putin also made some major announcements, with a key one being that Russia is pulling out of the START Treaty, the last major arms control agreement between it and the US, claiming that America, quote, wants to deal us a strategic defeat and are meddling with our nuclear facilities. Which, yeah, if you're talking about START and other nuclear treaties, that's the point. It allowed both sides to inspect nuclear missiles and sites to ensure that the terms of the deal were actually being followed. And while it's an absolutely major deal that Russia is officially pulling out, it's not especially surprising. The US has said for months that Russia has violated the treaty by refusing to let American inspectors check out sites and refusing to just discuss the matter. Though, quick update here, the Russian Foreign Ministry just added that it would actually still follow all of START's rules, minus allowing inspections. Which, since you have common sense, you know that kind of undermines the whole point of nuclear treaties. Trust, but verify. This, instead of their new policy, just trust us, bro. Wow, you don't trust us? Feels like it says more about you than it does us. Trying to gaslight us like an abusive ex, which is why we saw Secretary of State Antony Blinken describing Russia's decision as both really unfortunate and very irresponsible, while also leaving the door open for future arms control treaties. But one of the main things is with the last major arms control measure now thrown to the side, we can expect nuclear rhetoric to go on the rise. And despite assurances from the Russian Foreign Ministry that it'll just continue to follow all the other provisions of START, there's a chance we'll see a return to nuclear weapons testing, at least from Russia. With Putin preemptively justifying this by saying, without any evidence, we know for a fact that certain figures in Washington are considering the possibility of actual tests of their nuclear weapons. So if you had a return to nuclear testing on your 2023 bingo card, then feel free to check it off. And that's where today's show ends. Thanks for watching and being subscribed to my daily dives in the news. With that said, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love yo faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh no. I'm gonna run out of stuff to watch soon.
Sup, you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. Buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into today's news. AI has just exploded over the last few months, and we've been talking about it, right? In R and deep fakes, it's becoming so much more accessible. One of the latest controversies we're seeing is with AI writing books, because according to Reuters, in mid-February, there were over 200 ebooks offered in Amazon's Kindle store that listed ChatGPT as an author or co-author. While many of those books were about ChatGPT and how to use it, there are plenty of other kinds of books written by the service, which has left many in the industry concerned about what the impact's going to be. You know, with this, we've seen outlets like Insider speaking to someone who was able to create an illustrated children's book in 72 hours using ChatGPT and Midjourney, though that book, called Alice and Sparkle specifically, drew a lot of backlash from creatives and consumers. And in fact, if you look into the reviews, you had people sounding off, saying things like, I initially couldn't figure out why it seemed so alienating and dispiriting and why my 4-year-old daughter was so sickened by it, then realizing, oh, it was AI, and saying, you know, this is very poor and sloppy stuff. This truly represents a race to the bottom for children's art. And that's connected to why authors are concerned for two very different reasons. Where you have Mary Rassenberger, executive director of the Authors Guild, telling Reuters, this is something we really need to be worried about. These books will flood the market, and a lot of authors are going to be be out of work. And also adding there needs to be transparency from the authors and the platforms about how these books are created, or you're going to end up with a lot of low-quality books, which is relevant because a number of authors that are using this do not feel like it's important to disclose that a book was written by artificial intelligence, and right now, Amazon doesn't require the authors to do so. But I also think it's something that goes beyond that, because remember, and I'll repeat this over and over, today, where AI is the worst it will ever be ever again. So there can be the negative impact of a flooding of a lot of low-quality content that maybe makes people go like, oh, I don't like this whole experience. But also, if this becomes what I think it could become, you're going to see higher quality works start to come through, and then that can replace other authors. And with that, of course, it's also important to remember that this is impacting so many different industries. I mean, even just today, we saw headlines that Spotify is introducing an AI DJ feature, reportedly using some personalization features Spotify already has that creates playlists like Discover Weekly, but this DJ actually speaks to you and talks you through the songs that it's selecting for you. And Spotify is saying that the dialogue from the AI DJ is not pre-recorded. It's actually made on the spot via OpenAI. Meanwhile, in other areas, you have more chaotic stories like AI videos of politicians going viral on TikTok. But luckily, those fake videos aren't things like Biden saying he's about to nuke Europe, and instead giving you things like Obama, Biden, and Trump playing Uno together.
You guys want to play Uno? I want to use it for my upload tonight.
I don't have Uno.
Everyone has Uno, dipshit. It came free with your fucking Xbox.
But also, according to other reports, there are far more consequential examples of this, including videos where Biden's saying a racist slur. And some of the AI videos that are out there are far more convincing than the one we just showed, especially in a world where we're paying attention to a video like 5 to 20 seconds at a time and passing. And TikTok even having to take down a video of an AI-generated Joe Rogan touting a supplement called Alpha Grind. Right, so it's designed to look like, Rogan was promoting it, but it's actually a product that he's never endorsed. And honestly, with how long it takes for these kind of videos to get taken down, I think this is going to become a bigger and bigger problem. Like, it's just going to be this ever-losing game of whack-a-mole. You also have a ton of people right now talking about an AI clip of PewDiePie that's made its way around social media.
If you are watching Felix, IAI PewDiePie, I promise I won't replace you anytime soon. But I can take over your channel if you need some time off for the baby. Okay, now that you are here, I want to tell another story about the time ants ate my balls.
With people kind of just stunned by the audio in particular, thinking that it's eerily accurate. So yeah, I guess the main point here is another day as we further tiptoe into a world where you're never going to be able to believe your eyes and ears. And genuinely, for me, it's hard to feel like we're anything but doomed. Like, there's going to be cool shit in the middle, but I just don't see any foreseeable way that this doesn't get to a really dark place. And then, is deadly child abuse good for society? Somehow, that is the question we are debating right now. And it was actually kicked off at a House Judiciary Committee in Alaska, where you had state lawmakers discussing adverse childhood experiences, with one part of the presentation estimating that fatal child abuse cases could cost the family and society $1.5 million in trauma and potential earnings. But one Republican, David Eastman, honed in on that number and couldn't help but voicing his objection.
In the case where child abuse is fatal, obviously it's not good for the child, but it's actually a benefit to society because there aren't needed for government services and whatnot over the whole course of that child's life.
Through the chair, can you say that again? Did you say a benefit for society?
Talking dollars.
With him going on to clarify that he's just pointing out that the $1.5 million price tag may actually be offset by the cost savings from the dead child not using those government services that they would otherwise be entitled to. Completely insane devil's advocate bullshit that's somehow been normalized. And, you have people responding, well, what about the cost of the family? What about the cost to society? It's immeasurable. But David doesn't seem to get that point because he keeps going.
Does that $1.5 million get higher or lower? Depending upon the age at which the child is killed.
I'm just trying to crunch these numbers. Do we save more money if they die at age 5 or age 10? And keep in mind, this is coming from a guy who considers himself pro-life. And actually, on that issue, he stirred up outrage several years back as well, talking about Medicaid-funded travel for medically necessary abortions and saying, you have individuals who are in villages and are glad to be pregnant so that they can have an abortion because there's a free trip to Anchorage involved. With him making that comment in relation to a bill that he amended calling abortion, quote, the ultimate form of child abuse. Or I guess is the way he would think of it now, the ultimate cost savings. And then, the subway near your home or your work in the very near future may look different. Also, to clarify, I'm not talking about the mode of transportation, but rather the substandard sandwich shop. Because looking towards the future, Subway has to answer this question of how do we get more people to come into the shop if we're so committed to mediocrity? And one of the solutions they've come up with, I think actually could work, and we're going to start to see more and more of this. Because reportedly, Subway is now planning to build electric car charging oases. Oases? Whatever. It's a subway along with charging ports, bathrooms, games and playgrounds. And this is likely something that we're to see more and more of as people keep transitioning to electric vehicles. Right? Unlike when you pump gas, if you're stopping to charge your car, it's going to take more time. Whereas if you're going to have that guaranteed traffic where they literally can't get away, why not give them places where they can eat and give you money? And personally, I say, despite all the random bullshit I've been talking about Subway, I think it's smart and it's great that they're doing this. I'll probably use this place in the future. I'd love if, I don't know, it was also embraced by Firehouse Subs and Witch and literally any other sandwich place. But the main thing is you should expect the landscape to change drastically over the next decade. And then it's the beginning of a new year, and I've got a great hookup for you. With basketball, hockey, and concerts all in full swing, there's always an event for everyone, and you're not going to want to miss out. And even nicer, how about getting $20 off by using my code PHIL for tickets? Just one of the many reasons I want to thank the fantastic sponsor of today's show, SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. And with Taylor Swift, SZA, and Ed Sheeran on tour right now, you need SeatGeek. Listen, y'all, I've always used SeatGeek. Whether it was when I went to the Super Bowl or any other sporting stuff, concerts, comedy shows, stuff like that. Boom, a new experience at my fingertips thanks to SeatGeek. And SeatGeek wants to make sure that you're getting a good deal. So when you're on the app, look for the green dots. Green means good deal, red means bad. And every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps. It's $20 off your first purchase with promo code PHIL. So make sure you click that link in the description to download the app. And then this is the most important election of 2023, and so much is on the line. And you might not think so, because the race we're talking about is to fill an empty seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which you might be like, well, I don't live in Wisconsin. Hear me out. So the race has now officially been narrowed down to 2 candidates after the primary election yesterday. In first place, you have liberal Milwaukee County Judge Janet Protasewicz, and trailing her was conservative Daniel Kelly, a former Wisconsin State Supreme Court justice who was appointed by the state's then Republican governor in 2016, but lost the seat in 2020 re-election where he had been endorsed by Trump. Now, a key thing with this story is that this race is technically supposed to be nonpartisan, but Protasewicz has closely aligned herself with Democrats, while Kelly has done the same with Republicans. And both parties, as well as dark money groups, have poured millions and millions of dollars into the so-called nonpartisan race. And the reason for that is that the stakes here could not be higher. The outcome of this election will determine whether liberals or conservatives have a 4-3 majority on the state Supreme Court at an incredibly consequential time, where there are a number of insanely important issues at play here. And if you're thinking, well, I don't live in Wisconsin, this doesn't impact me. Well, I have the unfortunate duty to let you know, no, not true. This has massive implications for the whole country. And as I always say, you may not fuck with politics, but politics will fuck with you. Or, more specifically, in the words of the chairman of Wisconsin's Democratic Party, the Wisconsin Supreme Court race will shape the future of American democracy. Wisconsin is one of the most important swing states in the country. It helped decide the outcomes of both the 2016 and 2020 presidential elections, and it is the center of debates on gerrymandering and free and fair elections that have played a huge role in deciding those races. And that state Supreme Court, which has had a conservative majority for the last 14 years, has been instrumental in shaping those policies, having weighed in on many of the most crucial topics and almost always sided with Republicans. For example, in what has been described as arguably the most important decision the court has made in recent years, the court ruled 4-3 last year to uphold one of America's most gerrymandered maps that gave Republicans a massive advantage. I mean, this map was so gerrymandered that the GOP was able to hold 6 of Wisconsin's 8 seats in the House of Representatives and get a big majority in the legislature, despite the fact that Democrats won the most statewide races. Very significantly here, the whole situation was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right? A big reason the conservative majority has decided so many important things is because the state government is deadlocked with a Republican majority in the legislature and a Democratic governor. So by approving a map that massively favored Republicans, the conservative court kept the system in place, ensuring that they'll continue to have the final say on so many of these essential areas. But if Protasewicz, the liberal candidate, wins in this general, the court is all but certain to revisit the gerrymandered map, with her even explicitly saying in a recent interview that a liberal majority could establish new election maps. So not only would this move have major implications for internal Wisconsin politics, but also for the very control of Congress itself, where Republicans currently hold a very slim 5-seat majority, so any seats Democrats gain could tip the scales. Also, to that point, the Wisconsin Supreme Court also plays a huge role in how the state's elections are administered and could influence how its 10 electoral college votes are doled out in the 2024 presidential election. Because last year, the conservative court banned absentee ballot drop boxes, and back in 2014, it upheld a GOP voter ID law that studies have shown suppressed black voters. And although the court did vote against considering Trump's lawsuits to try and overturn the 2020 election in Wisconsin, they only did so by an alarmingly slim margin of 4-3. And this court will all but certainly be tasked with wading into elections-related cases in the coming years. You don't even have to look far into the future. I mean, you have the court right now expected to hear a lawsuit by a conservative group aiming to further limit voting access by banning mobile and alternative voting facilities. There are also other issues at play, like some very basic human rights. But one of the things that this race has centered most heavily on is abortion rights, because the outcome of this race will almost definitely determine whether or not abortion will be legal for the state's 6 million residents. And that because after Roe v. Wade was overturned, Wisconsin law banning abortion that was literally from 1849 went back into effect. But a lawsuit against that ban is winding its way through the court system right now, and it's basically a done deal that it'll eventually go before Wisconsin Supreme Court. And when it does, experts and analysts say that if Kelly wins, it's all but assured that abortion will remain illegal in almost all cases. But Protasewicz has campaigned extensively on abortion rights and vocally supported the right to choose. She also said she believes a liberal majority could reverse a 12-year-old law that basically eliminated collective bargaining for public workers. When you take everything we've talked about with this story and collectively, it's why you have Protasewicz saying everything is at stake, and I mean everything. Women's reproductive rights, the maps, drop boxes, safe communities, clean water, everything is on the line. So right now, we're gonna have to wait to see what actually happens. You have the general election there on April 4th, and it's believed that it will be very close. Because even though Protasewicz took a solid lead in the primary, winning 46.4% to Kelly's 24.2%, an incredibly important thing to note is that Kelly only got some of the conservative votes. And meanwhile, the other liberal candidate didn't take nearly as many votes away from Protasewicz. When you add up all the votes for all the candidates, it becomes a much closer race. So for now, we're gonna have to wait and see, and no big deal. Just the future of American democracy at stake. Though honestly, that feels like every election now. And then, whether you're religious or not, you better start praying you don't end up at this hospital. I'm talking about the Robert J. Dole VA Medical Center in Wichita, Kansas, with the story starting on a summer afternoon with a doctor cutting into a patient. The patient is suffering from peripheral artery disease, which is when fatty plaque clogs up arteries, blocking blood flow to the legs and the arms. And it's a condition that affects so many, in fact, 6.5 million Americans over the age of 40, and it can cause pain, numbness, and other usually minor symptoms. With key thing, this sometimes treated using devices like tubes with blades attached to shave hardened deposits off of artery walls, as well as stents to widen blood vessels and balloons coated with therapeutic drugs. But very importantly, these can lead to complications such as blood clots or even amputation, so they're typically used sparingly, maybe 2 or 3 per operation. But not at this hospital. Over an extraordinarily long 3-hour procedure, the doctor inserts more than 15 devices. And the reason for why the hell would you use 15 of these may have something to do with the person standing next to him, Carrie Kirk, who's a representative for the world's largest medical device company, Medtronic, who supplies the hospitals with many of its instruments. And while it's common for company reps to be present during vascular procedures so they can guide doctors through using their products, that can also lead to bad incentives. Right? I mean, just think about it. Companies profit more when their products are used. So the presence in the room can influence treatment plans. And in this case, we saw how warped Kirk's motives were by the text convo she was having with a colleague in real time, expressing what can only be described as maybe a little bit too much excitement about the drug-coated balloons, announcing just use 12 with 2 exclamation marks. To which he responds, does that mean I owe you money? And she answers, that's what I'm thinking, with an emoji of someone rolling on the floor laughing, with him later saying, you're gonna want to start going to the VA all the time. And the only reason we now have these messages is because a whistleblower took Medtronic to court for allegedly bribing hospital staff into using exorbitant amounts of product, with a lawsuit and documents claiming that between 2011 and 2018, the company gave VA workers Apple electronics, NASCAR tickets, and hundreds of expensive meals. And in exchange, the hospital allegedly signed a lucrative contract with Medtronic. Meanwhile, the company allegedly groomed and trained physicians who, let's say, use the devices liberally. And by liberally, I mean dozens at a time. With one hospital administrator who was shocked to discover how many devices they were buying, saying, we were more expensive than, I believe it was, the top 10 hospitals in the VA combined. And in the worst case, reportedly, a doctor used 33 devices on one person, with investigators actually finding that amputations rose 6x during that same time period, though not concluding one way or the other about it being causal. And attorneys in the lawsuit say, it is unconscionable. There can be no valid medically acceptable basis to cram so many devices into a human being. This is not medical treatment. This is abuse. And in addition to using just a ludicrous number of these devices, they also allegedly use them as a first resort during the earliest stages of peripheral artery disease, despite there being cheaper alternatives that are at least as effective. Now, of course, with this, the company and the doctors are denying the allegations, but it's far from the first time that Medtronic has been accused of stuff like this. Right in 2018, for example, its subsidiary Covidien settled for $13 million over claims that it gave kickbacks to hospitals that used its mechanical blood clot devices, and another subsidiary forking over $18 million at admitting to persuading surgeons to use its devices outside of approved procedures in the brain. And then the next year, the first subsidiary again settled for $17 million over claims that it gave in-kind marketing support to doctors using its vein products. And then the year after that, Medtronic paid $9 million to settle claims that it bribed a neurosurgeon to buy its medication pumps, which is also one of the reasons why I think you and I probably don't expect this company to be held responsible. Because when you're the world's largest producer of medical devices playing with tens of billions of dollars, settlements are often just the price of doing business. I mean, honestly, at this point, I think it should be one of the slogans for America. If you do the crime, you don't have to do the time if you pay a dime. that is actually where today's show ends. As always, I want to say thank you for watching, being subscribed to these daily dives into the news. My name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love you.
Make enough profit so that you can cover the legal fees anyway. Oh, some guilt entertainment.
This article, the 100 unhealthiest foods in the world. Back in the day, I probably would have avoided all these. Recently, I stumbled across this article, the 100 unhealthiest foods in the world. Back in the day, I probably would have avoided all these foods like the plague. But as I've gotten older and wiser, I see it as a challenge. How many of these foods can I fit in my diet in the next 50 hours? Let's find out. Before we begin on our journey, let's take a look at the starting physique. Weighing in just above 198 pounds, I'm feeling good and lean. Over the next few days, I'm not expecting much to happen. Maybe bad skin, some fatigue, and some serious, like really serious bloat. Venti White Hot Chocolate is apparently the highest calorie drink on the Starbucks menu. So why get it? I think my life's purpose is to be a cautionary tale for others. I feel like this is gonna give me like high school acne for a week. Like, look at the size of this thing. It's so deep. Adele's rolling in it. Oh my god, I feel like by the time I get to the end of this, I'm gonna be like drinking my tears. This thing is so damn sweet. I feel like they should just serve this in shots. Probably 200 calories right there. I prefer it darker, but regardless, still nice on the throat. A lot of people think that muffins are a good choice, a good investment. That's like saying, you know, you think investing in Logan Paul is a good choice too. It's not. They pack a lot of calories, a lot of sugar, a lot of fat. 330 calories for this. Not worth it to me. I definitely like the top of a muffin a lot better, but I feel like bottoms are equally as important. Oh, I love my mouth gets like constantly attacked, but it's just like too much of the same thing. Sweet and sweet. It's just nonstop.
It is the message.
Stud muffin meets muffin. While the White Hot Chocolate had me feeling like my next destination should be the dentist, this meal was only the first stop on my descent into the world of unhealthy foods. Next stop, the grocery store. Imagine walking through the red light district without your wallet. That's what it was like for me walking through the meat section. Definitely, I think one that everyone's gonna be surprised about is bottled smoothies. On the surface, it looks like a great choice, but also we think that vaping was a good choice. Monsters out from under my bed and into my mouth again. Are you guys crunchy or soft? Comment down below. Chester, hardly know her. I'm taking these ones. I never realized how many types of Oreos there are. Gotta go with the original. An inspirational cookie, really. I sometimes call the candy aisle the playground, not because of like the boundless joy, but people tend to stare when I linger too long. Looks like I'm hosting a kid's Super Bowl party. Bread, pale and begging to be filled, I feel seen. Somehow it's not hard to believe that Coke used to be healthier with its namesake in it. This shit is so bad for you, man. Bruh, are you kidding me? Say less. Well, if you looked at my cart, you would think that I just gave up on being a good father. There's literally nothing fresh in there. I think the freshest thing I have is white hot dog buns, which says a lot. Hungry man, more like starving child. Feel like shit, but just feel like shit. For breakfast, I had like 800 and something calories at the Starbucks, and I'm already starving, so that's the downside of these amazing foods. They taste amazing in the moment, but then right after they're done, you're like, have I even eaten a damn thing yet? This meal looks like my wife has left me. It just, yeah, I mean, under all the foods, there's a reason as to why they're on that list. I feel like I don't even have to read it. I just have to look at it, and it just says enough. I don't always have to trust the meat that I take, but these meals are asking a lot of me right now. This is the spicy buffalo chicken mac and cheese. If this is chicken, what has been on my plate all these years? Growing up as a kid, I was obsessed with frozen meals. Obsessed, so this is gonna be very nostalgic for me. A taste of childhood that is truly trauma-free. If you go into it with very low expectations, it exceeds your expectations. The chicken's a bit rubbery, but once you get past that, It's quite animalistic. Now this one is beef stroganoff, and all I see is disappointment. If that is steak, well then I am president of the United States. This just looks like beef stroganoff. Like, what is this? It looks like I found this meal in somebody's attic from like World War II. Yeah, that is sketchy, man. Whoa. Mixed berry, we got 5 1/4 apples in here, 42 berries and half a banana. How could this be bad? Shit. I feel like I taste plastic, or I don't know. Ooh. I must say it was very weird unloading all those groceries and not even having to open my fridge. Because usually all the stuff I buy is fresh. I'm not saying you should never buy these foods. Every now and then, that's fine. You know, 80-20 rule. 80% good, 20% have some processed stuff. Your diet is your bank account, and the healthy choices are the best investments. Fuck, it's gross. I think the worst thing that I could have done was sit down on this couch, because I am exhausted and my motivation to train is non-existent. As we make our way through the list, I figured it would be ideal to make the most or least of this time by exploring exercises that will, similar to the foods, contribute the least to achieving your fitness goals. I think the only thing achieving growth from the workout we're about to do are egos and medical bills. The first exercise is external rotation with dumbbells. It's not unsafe, it's just ineffective. I suggest using cables or a band. The force of the dumbbell is directed down, so the only thing resisting that force is your biceps, not your rotator cuff. So this is really doing absolutely nothing. Really? The next exercise is shoulder front raises. A lot of us have overdeveloped anterior delts and underdeveloped side and rear delts. You're gonna hit your front delts when you do anything like bench press, shoulder press, so you can use your time a lot more efficiently, hit the rear delts and side delts a lot more. Less lat activation, less overload, more risk of injury. You're not a circus bear, you're not Performance Seal, so stay away from the bow suit, you clown. That wasn't supposed to happen that way. I cannot think of a less anabolic of a workout. Nonetheless, we are still going to refuel with a little taste of Mexico, the legal but arguably less healthy kind. Oh, okay. I am the only one at this restaurant, which is a bit concerning, but the urinals did have ice, so I think we're off to a good start. I got a taco bowl and I got churros. On the list it said desserts, like restaurant desserts, but then it specifically called out churros. So I don't know if that's like racist towards Mexicans. Look at the size of this thing, I'm gonna swallow it whole. Just gonna make another churro act up a little bit. Hard and soft at the same time. Warm, crispy. Gotta add some chocolate to it. A darker influence always makes it a little bit better. Wow, no. Oh my god, those beans are so good. The consistency is so thick. You could like seal a wound with it. Now the only reason why the taco bowl is on the list is because it's high in calories. We cannot confuse unhealthy with high calorie. They're just not the same thing. A lot of healthy foods are high in calories, almond butter, avocado, certain cuts of meat, but we've been demonizing high calorie foods, especially in the fitness industry, because it's harder to fit in our diet. So we kind of remove the egg yolks, so we can only have the whites because there's more calories in the yolk, but there's so much nutrients in the yolk, and we just leave it out. If we're not supposed to have late night snacks, then why is there a light in the fridge? For dinner, I had myself 4 chicken hot dogs. Chicken is what they say it was, but who the hell knows? At this point, my body is full of preservatives and emotions. But it's time to have a snack, and me saying that I need a snack is like a bald man saying that he needs a comb, because I am not remotely hungry. But we gotta chip away on that list, and we're gonna end the night off doing something pretty big. Limited edition apple pie cinnamon toast crunch taste test. Tastes like grandma. It says whole grains It says naturally flavored. So this is how they get you. It looks healthy on the surface, but then it's loaded with a bunch of sugar. And that has the same thing for everything here. Oreos, it has sustainably sourced cocoa. Cheetos, these things are just shit for you. Made with real cheese. No wonder why Taco Bell thinks they can call their meat beef. Katie and I, we're gonna dig into all these things, feel really, really bad about ourselves before we go to bed, and call it a night. Ready, babe? I think the question here is, we know junk food is bad for us, so why do we continue to eat it? Unfortunately, our bodies are hardwired to crave junk food. When you eat foods that you enjoy, you stimulate the feel-good centers in your brain, triggering you to eat even more. In the same ways that an addict develops a tolerance to drugs. Sugar makes you want more sugar, fat makes you want more fat. Our brains are chasing that pleasurable state of food euphoria. Also, the popularity of junk food can be attributed to its visual appeal. It looks amazing. Like, have you seen the commercials? Manufacturers put color additives to make things more vibrant and saturated, to make junk food look more attractive to consumers, especially children. And we tend to associate the color of stuff with its health level. Woke up super late this morning with a pounding headache, a little after 10:30, which is something I don't normally do. I don't know if you can tell, but I have like some like breakouts right here on like the forehead. I really don't feel good right now. It's really hard to even get up. I feel I was like sleeping with like a Walden Farms IV drip. Hopefully my skin can handle another 24 hours of trauma. There's only so many facials I can fit in my schedule. I have decided I am gonna Uber Eats McDonald's for breakfast. Oh my God, it even hurts to look at a screen right now. What? Are you telling me they don't have hash browns for all day breakfast? That doesn't even make sense. They have French fries? I think even McDonald's knows they can't even compete with their own fries. Sausage and egg McMuffin additions. Are you kidding me? Why do they have to show the calorie count? Let's go with nice little O.J. Simpson. Butter, 15 calories. Why do you need butter on a sausage and egg McMuffin? Like, that's an easy, just like remove that. Ooh, I gotta add a tomato in there. For 3 calories, I can do that. All right, I'm not checking out yet, I'm not done. Ooh. Gonna get a sprinkled donut. Your order is scheduled. It's gonna be here in an hour and 15 minutes. Jin Yang is here. Yeah. Appreciate it, bro. Thank you. You're the goat. See ya. The bag smells like farts, y'all. Disappointed by the size. I can see what Katie feels every single night. Look at this thing. What the hell? 190 calories in this. How is that even possible? Damn, yo. It's incredibly mediocre. Let's go with the sausage and egg McMuffin. Once it's in your mouth, you remember how good it is. Like a lot of things. That sausage is just intoxicating. Waffle fry time. I like the way it shakes when I do that.
Pull-ups, jumping lunges, shoulder press.
You know what? It takes a very advanced skill to mess up oil and potato. And somehow they managed to have done it. Oh. I feel like I've been wasting the day away, so enough playing with joysticks, and I think we should go out and actually try to accomplish something. I found myself at a very interesting indoor golf simulator place. I don't know if that's all they do here, if you know what I mean. The clientele is like recent divorcees and struggling hedge fund workers avoiding the IRS. This looks like the casting couch from your great-grandparents' era. I'm here for the next hour, channeling my inner tiger. On the course, of course, I am engaged. If I hit it 250 yards with a 5-iron, you gotta subscribe. Josh, look at that. Ordered myself a beer. Tastes like crap, but I've been told the more I drink, the better I perform. I'm gonna stick to beer because if I had tequila, it'd be the servers tipping me.
He never listens to me.
I swear my face says country club, but then my swing says to just Stick to bowling. I've been slamming balls for the past half an hour. Gonna have a protein bar, sport drink.
Anyway, that's it for today. That's my Friday workout. Be back next Monday. Do my forearm exercises on the weekends. Sometimes I stream it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm doing it while I'm watching stuff, so no one needs to see that. Get ready for work. Cheers for those who jumped in for a bit. Follow. Try to say hi. Anyway, I'm tired. Till next time. Take care of yourself and good luck in your